Yes, so this evening we're just going to touch on a few things that with perhaps the criminal justice system and the views of crime and punishment in our country. So the stuff we want to touch on is the costs of crime, the perspectives on crime, how Stoicism can help with that, and at the end, as Eve said, any questions. There you go. Well done, Eve. I like it. Okay, so the cost of crime is quite staggering. So I did a bit of research, and the last thing that I could find was in 2016, 18 billion pounds was the estimated cost of crime in our country. So 18 billion, which is absolutely phenomenal. But that's not just the cost of crimes, but that's committed by former prisoners. So this is the monetary terms of how much we've kind of let down society with the men that have been released from prison and gone on to commit further crimes. So just in 2016, 18 billion pounds. So one of the things I do in the lessons is try to get some perspective on these numbers, because particularly at the moment, I think with the coronavirus, the numbers seem to be so massive that we're dealing with billions for this, billions for that. Well, because people say a billion almost the same as a million. But I do a bit of fag packet maths and come up with stuff to make us realise the difference between 1 billion and a million. So if I had a time machine and I spent £1, and for every pound I spent, I could go back 1 minute. Just over £1 million, I could go back about 2 years. Just 2 years buys me £1 million, buys me about 2 years. £1 billion, if I've spent £1 billion going back a minute for every pound that I spent, I could see if Jesus was around or not, if it was real or it was pretend, or have a chat with Seneca. So that's the difference between a million and a billion, which is quite phenomenal. It's frightening. And I think we need to realise the failure that the prison service is. And I really like my job, but I'm realistic as well. If we're sending men back into society and they're still committing so many crimes, we've really got to have a look at ourselves, and it's not very good. So each prisoner as well, the cost per prisoner in our country is £46,000. And in some of the prisons, it's frightening to think that it costs 46 grand to keep one man in that prison for 1 year. And some young offenders, over £100,000 for 1 year. And I was reading that there is one young offenders up north where it's £138,000 for a young person to be there for a year. And over 80% of the prisoners reoffend. And Jay, do you think that that's frightening, some of those numbers, or would they ring true for you?
That's it. Obviously, I've not seen it from the numbers perspective. I've just seen it from people that I know walking out and coming straight back in. But to see it from this angle, it is absolutely shocking. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. Yeah,
and obviously there's the other stuff that comes along. It's not just money. There's other problems that come with it. But we'll discuss those in a minute. But when you see that over 80% of prisoners reoffend, I guess that's not surprising for you either, Jay, is it?
Absolutely not. And what's shocking about this as well, seeing the average cost of a prisoner in England and Wales, 46, that could be someone's yearly salary. 2 people actually that are in prison.
Yeah.
But they'd rather spend that time in. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
But when you put these stats out like this, though, it does put it into perspective. Well, the failure in society, really, because I think we all have a responsibility towards it, not just the government and the what's it called system.
Yeah.
Because in reality, that is a lot of money that's getting spent on band-aids, if that makes sense, and we're not really tackling the actual issue here.
Yeah. And I kind of understand that the government in their reticence to want to spend money on prisons, because your average person in the street, I guess, who reads the Daily Mail, the last thing they want to spend their hard-earned cash on is people who've committed crimes. And where I work, sometimes I can tell how difficult it is for the governor to spend money on some things that we know could do good to rehabilitate people. The money's just not there. So because who wants to spend money on prisons? But there's the maths at the end. £18 billion a year spent is a cost of ex-prisoners in 1 year. But this seems to be a problem that we have as a society, where we can't seem to get that message across. or the right people aren't talking about it. So when we talk about different perspectives on crime, the numbers obviously are very shocking. And then you start looking at the different perspectives on crime, so the public and the media. What do you think, Jay, with their perspectives, the media in particular? What are their perspectives on crime and how they're going to address it? What do you think?
Personally, obviously, I've got mixed feelings with it, because on one hand, they don't show this part of it. They don't show the stats of how much money is actually going into the prison system, and because these are figures I've never come across before, you know. And on the other hand, they're not actually sending the right message, if that makes sense. They're not getting the society behind the movement of actually trying to rehabilitate these prisoners the right way, if that makes any sense. Because breadcrumbs ain't going to help rehabilitate a prisoner, you know.
No.
Which is shocking. But what I do want to touch on is, for me, from my perspective, like speaking on the Band-Aids, and let me expand on that a bit more. I knew if I went into the prison and I got a personal trainer's certificate, that's not going to guarantee me changing my life, because a certificate is just a piece of paper. What's the real issue here is what people seem to run away from. The real issue here is how do these people think? What makes them tick? What makes them get in that situation where they're at the crossroads of whether I'm going to commit a further crime or now I want to change my life? What tools do they have to actually make that right decision, a calculated decision? What's their thought process through all of that? That's the real issue, you know? And I could speak all night about this, to be honest.
I totally know what you mean, and that's one of the reasons for me putting the Stoic Philosophy course on, was because I could see that what we were doing for the men in our care, we were giving them level 2 qualifications and then personal trainer and spinning instructor and getting them job ready. And there was plenty of jobs in the fitness industry, so they were good to go. But then there's one big problem: their thinking processes were incorrect, and they're always going to come back to prison, because how do they know this? That's all they've ever done, you know, and that's all you ever did. Until one changes one's thinking process, no one's going to change anything, and that's what we need to do. And the really sad kind of irony of it is, it's not expensive to do. You know, you've been on the courses that we run. They're not expensive, are they? You just know it's
absolutely
a little bit of photocopying, you know, and some guys, you know, a couple of guys who've not even had any training in it, formal training, can make a massive difference to society. But I think that the perspective the public have is spend as least amount of money on the prisons as you can, make the walls higher, get some more guards in there to keep them inside, and that's probably about it. And then put our head under the pillow and hope it all goes away. But unfortunately, it doesn't, does it? We've still got to face up to this, and it's going to take a push. And when I was looking at some history stuff, a lot of historians think that Britain won the Industrial Revolution because it had like have-a-go heroes, guys in their shed doing things. That was the thing that made this cut this country apart from others, is that we were prepared to have a go. Normal people were going to have a go, and I think that's what we all need to do, is have a go. If you've got some access to kids in a school, go and talk to them about Stoicism, because it's remarkable the effect that just one person can have. I mean, look at the effect that you're having in your area, Jay. I mean, can you just talk about the work that you do with the young people that you have? Because I think it's so important that people can see the power of what you do.
Absolutely. Speaking on obviously the certificates and the qualifications that I did end up getting inside prison, are the certificates that I'm actually not using. Are the same certificates that did not get me a job, which is crazy. Come to think of it, because what I worked on was my thought process, and I thought, you know what, that's what's actually getting me in trouble. But the difference was I was honest with myself, because when you start from an honest standpoint within yourself, you could always see where you're going wrong, if that makes sense. And for me, it was that instant gratification. Constantly, I grew up with it in reality. You know, I've built a habit of, if I want something, I go get it now. So currently I'm working with kids who are, like, social media is the new era, and this is the new generation that we live with. But what social media does to these kids is instant gratifications, but on a next level. because it's at a touch of their finger. All they have to do is pick up the phone and they feel good about themselves, or they might feel not so good about themselves. So I work with hard to reach young people. I mentor young people on a one-to-one basis in group settings. And these are young people who disengage with all services and all professionals, disengage with school, struggling at home, self-confidence. Some are on the periphery of crime. And I work with them to help them realize their full potential. But the way I engage these young people is I'm not telling them what to do. This is the difference. And this is where I think I have more success with these young people than I would have if I didn't have the sort of Stoicism mind frame, if that makes sense. I give them the facts of whatever they're getting into, or the facts of where they're struggling. Does that make sense? So some of these young people see things on social media, they see things around them, the stuff that they hear from their friends, families, and they only take the good parts out of it, and they only take that perspective that they've heard and go and actually run with it. When in reality, no one ever tells these young people the bad side or the negative side or what comes with it. You know, so much more that you have to carry for the rest of your life. No one tells them. And that's why like for instance, I had a young person the other day who was totally honest about how much cannabis they smoke. And then I had a colleague sitting right next to me, and the colleague was expecting me to say, "Oh, you need to stop smoking." How can I say that? I can't say that, because what's going to happen if I say you need to stop smoking? That's me telling them what to do. First thing they're going to do is, okay, yeah, they'll listen for 2 minutes and walk away and be like, okay, I'm not going to go back to that conversation again. But I give them practical tools of how to actually, because I've been in that situation where someone said to me, you need to change your life. You need to do this. You need to do that. Okay, but how? Which is the big question. They want practical tools. What can I actually work on? What can I focus on that I can do practically to really help me change, if that makes sense? So I'll give you an example of me in prison. There was no better training facility for me. It wasn't a prison. My perspective of it completely changed. From when I started studying Stoicism and that, it wasn't prison for me no more. It was actually a training ground. Because I knew my battles, as Andy said to me a million times, your battles start when you walk out of that gate. That's when the true war within yourself starts. So I knew that saying these things weren't really practical tools. Like, for instance, I knew there were staff in the prison that didn't like me so well. They didn't like me too much because I was mouthy, yes. I weren't scared to voice my opinions on whatever it was, even if it didn't concern me. If I felt like someone else was getting wronged, I'll still add my 2 pence. Don't know why, but it was a habit that I had. And I was very, very impatient. So there's staff who did not like me. I'll be walking in the hallway, I'd hold the door open for a member of staff who I knew we both didn't like each other. You know, let's not sugarcoat it. And then my friends would be walking back from the gym saying, what are you doing? What are you standing there for? What are you waiting for? I said, no, I'm just holding the door for someone. But I'm doing it because I needed to practice on patience. I knew that I needed that. I lacked it massively. One of the reasons why I was in prison, to be fair. I knew I needed to work on these things. How could I cope with being in that situation? So if I use that prison system as a training ground, how can I duplicate that and apply it to these young people that I work with on a day-to-day basis? What practical tools can I give them, support them? You know, and one of the exercises that we sit down and do that really, really benefits them is what you can and can't control. We've got this habit where we believe we can control everything in our lives. But when they hear you can only control 3 things in your life and influence the rest, they're blown away, you know? So they've got a different perspective now. So they walk away from me or my conversation or our mentoring session with something that they can actually go away and use, you know? But yeah, I work with young people in different settings, and it's very rewarding. Don't get it twisted. I really, really enjoy my job. But coming back to what I was saying before, though, it's not the certificates that's got me in this position, and it's not what's helping me right now to be part of the movement that I'm in, that I'm taking part in. You know, I could have just came out of prison and said to myself, you know what? Like, I've got a son. I could just be a dad to him, get a normal job, 9 to 5, warehouse, stacking shelves, whatever it is. But it didn't sit right with me, you know, carrying the stuff that I carry. It didn't sit right with me, knowing what I've done, the community that I live in itself, what I've taken away from it, how much damage I've caused. You know, how many young people that I know that I've put on the streets, some of them who are serving life sentences. They're all things that I take responsibility for. Um, Obviously, it doesn't eat me away like it used to, but I've learned how to deal with this stuff. You know, I've learned how to put them in perspective and say, you know what, this is that. These experiences have shaped me to be the person I am today. So I can't take them back. But what can I do to really help the ones that are coming next? Is use my experiences, share my experiences, and then help them shape their future in a different direction.
Yeah, that's great, Jay. I don't think it can be overstated the work that you do and how important that is to your community. You know, and I just think that it's going to spread, isn't it? One of the things that I just touch on with when you say about the social inclusion stuff is we've been doing that in the prison I work at for a few years. So guys who have completed the Stoic course, I mean, you did it yourself, Jay. Is how you got into what you're doing now. We've had some fantastic success with the very hard to reach young people coming into the prison and speaking to young men like yourself, and the power that you have, guys like you, who walk the walk and talk the talk, is amazing. It's a factor of 100 over what I can do. You know, the way that you can connect with the people that really matter, because they're the ones that really matter, aren't they? They're going to be the future criminals. You know, a lot of these young people are into criminality already. And the way that you connect with people is amazing. Like when you come into the prison and speak to the guys that we have on the Stoic courses, it resonates much more than anything that I could ever do. So just always be aware of the power of what you do in your community is fantastic. And I think for everybody watching this now, and they can have the same effect on their communities. You know, the power of one person is incredible, isn't it? When you look at someone like Mandela or Gandhi, you know, they're just one person with a vision and with a slow, steady step forward all the time. Just keep moving forward, and the power that has is unbelievable. And that's what you're doing. And you know, I just think it's amazing the work you do. But when we start thinking about the perspectives on crime, the prisoners in the prison, their perspectives on crime, I think regular citizens might be quite surprised by it. That a lot of prisoners seem to think that they're the victims of their situations that they're in. You know, you're laughing now, Jay, when we do a whole thing about being a victim and how you do it. You know, so there's definitely victims of crime, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But the guys that commit the crimes very quickly paint themselves as being the victim of the system, or victim that they got snitched out, or victim of their circumstances, and very quickly turn that around and they're the victim, which is quite odd. And I'm not sure if regular citizens, you know what I mean, regular citizens, people outside of prisons would probably comprehend that. They probably wouldn't think that prisoners do that. But I see you laughing, Jake. You know, from a real inside view, would you agree with that, with a lot of the men in prison?
Absolutely. But that's the thing, though. You know, this 16-hour course that you've put on, Andy, I think was massive help, because one thing you've got to understand in prison is there's no conversation that is off limits. Like, you've got to have super thick skin to be in that classroom. And that was the beauty of it, because it tackled our thinking. Like, how in the world did I ever think of myself as a victim? Knowing now, obviously, thinking back of how I used to, as I said, I'd add my 2 pence in things that didn't concern me. I'm walking past on the hallway and people are arguing, but I'll just add my 2 pence and egg it on. But in reality, I'm walking around and arguing with staff, not knowing that I'm making myself a victim of whatever situation I'm walking into. You know, like I'd walk into prison and people were like, why are you here? How come you're here? Oh, mate, it's not even my fault why I'm here, you know. My boy got nicked and then I was there and we all got nicked together, you know what I mean? So it's not actually my fault. You know, that's the sort of thinking you get with people, and they think, I could have got away with it, but this happened. So that means I still got another second chance. You know what I'm saying? Oh, it's not my fault though, it's the judge, he didn't like me. You know, You hear all sorts. Like you even hear, I think one of the funniest ones were, I didn't grow up without a dad, that's why I'm in prison. You know, to some extent, obviously today, the work that I do, I see a lot of it around me. It does play a little factor, but it's not a major factor because it takes a village to raise people, you know? So you can't just blame it on just not having one person, but you see a lot of victims who don't know they're victims walking around in prison massively. And whenever I hear people talking about obviously perpetrators who don't see themselves as victims of themselves, not victim of other people, but they're victims of themselves, the mindset that they have, the sort of situations that they put themselves in, which is another reason why change is so hard when it comes to that. Until they see they take ownership of what they're doing and responsibility. Obviously, they'll say it because you put it on them and say, "Oh, do you admit to what you do?" They'll be like, "Yeah, I do all of this stuff," but they'll still make excuses for it. They'll still say, "Oh, I never had no education. That's why I had to sell drugs. I never had this. That's why I had to do that." You know, they're constantly creating that what's the word? They're constantly creating that narrative for themselves to keep it going. So it's one situation which they isolate, another situation they isolate, another situation they isolate. When in reality, they should look at all of them and think, "Hold on, I'm actually not really good at this. If I keep ending up in prison, how can I stop?" You know, it's constantly isolating these things and saying, "I was a victim in that situation, or this happened to me because of my bad luck, or this was this situation because someone else done it." But they never look at it from a bird's eye view because they're victims of themselves, the narrative that they create for themselves to keep on going.
I think when we in the course that we run, we touch on a bit of basic neuroscience. We talk about the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. But if you're letting your life live on your limbic system, so that's what the Dr. Steve Peters calls our inner chimp. Now, if we live our life using our inner chimp for everything, our inner chimp will always tell us to make us up a victim, because it's just so lovely, isn't it? It's so easy to do. It's just a beautiful thing. Oh yeah, I'm only in prison because I got snitched out, but someone grasped me up. And then, so when you look at that, just that one individual, and if he really believes that he's only in prison because somebody grasped him up, he's then going to go out of prison. If he's not challenged all through his prison sentence, he's going to go out of prison and then think, "I'm only in prison because of a snitch, because I was grasped up. So what I need to do, therefore, is to avoid telling people about my crimes or eliminate all snitches. And therefore, I won't go to prison again." So you can understand, when you're just using your limbic system, that you're always going to go to the easiest option, and that is to make myself a victim. You know, and Epictetus says you can't be a victim of somebody else unless it's really bad physical injury. You can only be a victim to yourself. And once we get past that, I think everybody does it to an extent in everyday life, or people who are not conscious of a life of self-mastery will make themselves a victim, because it's just so darn easy to pass that responsibility of your own life onto somebody else, or onto the past, or onto some dad that you only saw once, or someone that died when you were young. It's just easy to do. And again, when we start looking at taking responsibility for our actions, when you say to someone who's 19 years old, "Right, you've got to come in tonight at 9 o'clock, bed because you've got work in the morning," they go, no, I'm 19, I'm a big man now, you can't tell me. But then as soon as something goes a little bit wrong in their life, whatever that may be, they'll pass it on, make themselves a victim, and pass on the responsibility to some other person or some other time and space or something in the past. So they're not taking responsibility. So yes, it's such a big deal, and I'm sure people who are watching this now probably can't really comprehend that prisoners make themselves the victim, but they do it very often. Okay, so just something else we want to touch on.
Just a quick one, Andy. I think when you said that, though, people wouldn't believe that prisoners see themselves as, they put themselves as victims. The prisoners themselves don't see it, which is the strangest thing.
Yeah.
You know, and especially when you're talking about taking a victim stance in every situation that they're in. The fact that they're blind to it is what's scary.
Yeah. And what's scary is who's challenging that thought. And when we start looking at the whole of society now, everything's geared up, or seems to be, for people to say it's not my fault. This is not my fault. That's not my fault. And I know we shouldn't be, I'm not on about apportioning blame either. I'm on about responsibility, the different things. But when we start handing away that responsibility to different areas, we're handing away our personal power, and people don't understand that. They don't understand that mechanism. And I see it all the time. I see people in very privileged, high power positions handing away their personal responsibility for their own lives and saying, this is my personal truth, or just behaving how they want. Even presidents of the United States are handing away, just talking nonsense and blaming everything and making themselves a victim. And it's just, and then we wonder why at our level of working in the criminal justice system or being in the criminal justice system, why we're struggling so much when the higher echelons of society are as bad as anyone. They're kind of the worst now. Everyone's got onto this thing of let's be the victim. That's the way out of stuff. But what do you think of that, Jay?
It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Especially when they give that ownership and responsibility to other people. Like, I think for me, the day that I realized that I was making myself a victim, the day that I realized that, hold on, all this time I was a victim of myself, that blew me away. That blew me away. But it was a powerful time in my life anyway. A really, really important time in my life that I remember like it was yesterday. Because it's like you've been carrying weights on your shoulders for years and years and years, and just realizing that you are making yourself a victim by taking these stances that you're taking, and then having to drop that weight. Unbelievable.
I'm so lucky.
Unbelievable.
I'm so lucky because I get this opportunity every day to sit in a classroom with I've got just finished two courses today of two sets of guys, two different courses, and the connection that I had with those guys, and I could see it in their eyes. They were just freer. They all, even though they're sat in prison, they all understand what freedom is and being free from oneself and all the problems. Because some of these guys get in such turmoil, inner turmoil, with their problems sleeping, and they get angry and frustrated, and there's self-harm and all the rest of it. And just by giving them some basic skills, and like you say, it's a 16-hour course. It goes on a bit longer than that sometimes when we're talking, doesn't it? But it just sets people free. And Stoicism is such an amazing tool for people who were in the situation you were in, that helpless situation where you're incarcerated.
Even taking that, now that I understand these things, and that I take responsibility for every action I take, that ownership, knowing that I'm in charge and I'm responsible for everything I do, is giving me so much self-power, self-confidence, so much things that comes with it. Imagine me trying to apply this Stoicism, or not in the way that we know it, and applying it to a 16-year-old who's struggling in school and is in his last year of secondary school. That's my challenge. That's my challenge every single day. But I live for it. I wake up in the morning, and that is what the stuff that I focus on. That is the stuff that I say to myself, all right, how am I going to get through to this one? Because I know it's going to do him the world of good. But starting from a point where making them understand that every action that they take in school, because what we do, especially young people, they love blaming other people for their mistakes. It's never them. Everything is, that happened because of this, that's happened because of that. So you see in the prisoners, you see these little kids really just running around in prison. So that just reminds me of that. But I always try to rephrase it for them in a way where they understand. They understand, hold on, you know what? If I can take a step back and look at this in a different way, I might not get in trouble with this teacher no more. I've had a couple successes. Obviously, some it doesn't register at all. But you do see some that get it and understand it, even though it's just probably the way I phrase it to them, and they get it, and they've gone on and done well and in their GCSEs and managed to stay in school without getting excluded. Which is a shock to some of the teachers. Like which is strange, because when I say these things, it's in a way it sounds like I'm blowing my own horn, but I'm not. I've had teachers in the school setting say, would you work in the school? But I couldn't do that because it's too structured and too formal. I like to be off the cuff. I like to work with these young people in a way that they get it, where it's for them, most importantly, But yeah, it's really rewarding when you see a young person understand that bit, that taking ownership and not making themselves a victim.
there'll be guys like you employed by the prison service to work alongside me. You know, you'll be with doing that kind of job. I can only see that being good for everyone, and I think it would be a fantastic move to get guys, ex-offenders, to come in and work full time, because who knows being what it's like to be in that criminal lifestyle better than somebody like you. You know, it's a bit daft on me when you really take a view from above with it to expect me to be able to really connect with someone who's come from your background. You know, I can't do it as well as you. So surely, you know, that could be one of the things. Well, it probably is going to be one of the things I'm going to be working on in the next few years, is pushing to get ex-offenders working with a full-time real job with a pension, working in the prison service, working alongside, you know, blokes like me in tracksuits.
Saying that though, Andy, when I did come back, remember the time that I was invited back to do that speech?
Yeah.
With some of the boys, I had some conversations with some of them about, like, obviously understanding where I went from. Obviously, I've had some successes. Fortunately for me, I've had some successes since I've come out of prison. But where they saw the change for themselves with their own eyes, someone that they was on the landing with, on the wing, who was probably walking the same showers, going to the same gym, doing all of that, banging up, locking up at the same time, and done a prison sentence with them, and seeing where I was and the stuff that I was talking about and what I was doing was really powerful to them, because they could see a bit of themselves in me and relate to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, that it's not something that I haven't got any superpowers. I've done exactly what they're doing. I've been in a position that they are in right now. Same sort of circumstances, but what's the difference between me and you? That was the question I was putting to people. What is the difference between me and you? In reality, there's no difference. The only difference is I've probably taken a step in really working on myself. Not the band-aid that we talk about. Really working on myself, looking at myself from an unbiased eyes, and tackling my issues, because we expect a lot from others, but very less from ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is what I work on a day-to-day basis. Expect more from myself and expect nothing from others. You know, I've had people in there who said to me, you know what, I had one foot in the streets, one foot out of the streets. Listening to you talk today that's made me think, okay, you know, I don't need to be on the roads no more. I can actually do it. So I've done an interview for Sky Sports not long ago, where I spoke about change. What does it look like though? That's the only problem. You know, some of these lads that are in there are coming out and reoffending because they're scared of changing. The fear of not knowing what's next. Everyone would be, you know, I was. But when you've got practical tools that you can hold on to, you know, that you can see, that you implement on a day-to-day basis, and you can see what comes from it. It's a foundation that you build that you can fall back on regardless of your circumstance, however low you get, whatever happens to you, you can fall back on it and say, you know what, I'm still here, I'm still breathing, I can do this. I've got practical tools that I can work on tomorrow. It's still another day. I can make it happen, you know? Yeah. And coming from that angle, because one thing I struggled with a lot was hearing people say to me, if you like, when you the only time, because I used to depend on my siblings, I used to depend on family to help me out whenever I had issues or whenever I was struggling and things like that. So being in prison, I was in a situation, or coming out, doing what I was doing in the past, I had people around me expected. So they were around me because we all had a common interest. So that's what kept us as a band of brothers, should I say, a common interest, the money, the stuff that came with it. All of that was the common interest. So whatever help I needed, it was available because of the common interest that we had. Take that common interest out, that help wasn't there no more. The help that I needed, the support that I needed wasn't there. So going into prison, there was a time I kept thinking help would always come. Help's gonna come, help's gonna come. And you know, when people say, you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, so true, absolutely true. Because I never wanted to help myself, but expecting help to come. Doesn't work like that. But the day I started working on myself and became my own superhero, help was just, it's coming out of nowhere. Everyone, I'll bump into this person, and I was getting help from someone that didn't like me. this person, because I think they can see the battles within myself. They can see that I'm really, really trying to make a change within myself first. Because I can't help no one if I can't help myself first, right? I can't do no one no good if I can't do good for myself. So that's where I knew I needed to work on more. It was me first. You know, it might sound selfish, but in a way, it's actually not selfish, because what use am I to you if I'm not 100%? You know, I was on a residential last night with young people, and they were staying up all night, like 3, 4 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and I was saying to them in the morning, what use am I with you going out to these activities when I haven't got no sleep? Same concept, but they get it. You know, so the next day they all went to bed at 11 o'clock, which is a good touch. Yeah.
I think that's one of the magic things with Stoicism, Jay, is I do probably remember when we do the exercises of can and can't control, which I know that you still find so useful, is once you start focusing on the things you truly control, is what you think, what you say, how you act, and the goals that you set. I'm doing the hand signals like I do in the lessons, but yeah, when you truly focus on those things, the other things just get better on their own, don't they? It's like a magic trick. But when you start focusing on things you influence or you have no control over, you're like a dog trying to get out of a kitchen door, a shut kitchen door, just scrambling away and getting nowhere. But when we fully focus our intentions and all of our efforts onto the things that we genuinely control, all the other stuff just seems to get in line, obviously apart from things like the weather and stuff like that. But you know, the things that you influence, you can have the best effect on them by being laissez-faire about them, by not really being that bothered. Oh, if I get it, great. If I don't, great. You know, the results are not mine. It's all down to me to take care of the things that I truly control, what I think, what I say, and what I do, and the goals I set. I mean, Epictetus just says it's our beliefs. That's the only thing that we control. But I think we've got to put some bit more flesh on the bones for that, and say a little bit more, especially with the men that we work with and the young people that you work with. If I was going to ask you one question, then what thing would you have to overcome, or prisoners would have to overcome for them to live a straight life? What one thing? I mean, you talked about the Sky Sports thing, didn't you? Is overcoming something. What do you think it is? It might surprise people, regular people out there, of the thing that stops prisoners making changes.
What, that stops them from making changes?
Yeah.
I think it's that fear, isn't it? It's that
fear. Yeah.
It's something you wouldn't say, and if you say it to them, they're just scared. Like, how could I be scared? I'm someone who does this and that on the streets.
Yeah.
I make all of these things happen. I do all of this. You know, they big themselves up on what they do. But what's real? What's fear? Fear is looking at yourself and being honest with yourself and saying, you know, what use am I to anyone?
Yeah.
You know, what good am I doing?
It's such a massive thing, isn't it? And I get, like the thing we were talking about earlier, regular folk would be surprised that prisoners would be full of fear, but they are. They're full of fear of the straight life. But yeah, and that's something that we focus on a lot, isn't it? Is trying to get our fear settings correct, where we've got two different flavors of fear, haven't we? We've got self-defeating fears and self-protecting ones. And again, our limbic system likes to mix the two up: the self-protecting fears and self-protecting and self-defeating fears, like the fear of going to the gym because somebody's looking at you. Our limbic brain will tell us that that's the same as crossing the M4 with a blindfold on. You know, but clearly they're two different things. But everybody likes to mix them all up and have that sort of worry fest. And prisoners are great at doing that. I can't do that. I'm scared to do that. What? Live a straight life? Oh, no. And then they start making all the bravado around it, don't they? Saying, oh, that's for wimps. I'm too tough. I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think you're dead right. Fear is the biggest problem, isn't it? And trying to get prisoners to overcome their fears and look them in the face. Absolutely. And look in that accountability mirror and be accountable to yourself and overcome your fears and understand that they're just self-defeating fears. And you can live a straight life and you can have a great time working in McDonald's or a job similar to that where you're on minimum wage. Of course, you can have a great life. And that's something else that I think that I want to touch on is and where we're going wrong as a society, where everything is about the stuff that you've got, isn't it? It's wants versus needs. You know, we spend a lot of time working that out, don't we? We're talking about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, and getting it straight in people's heads what you actually need for a good life. And do you want to cover a bit about that, Jay, with a prisoner's perspective of wants and needs?
Absolutely. Touching on obviously the fear, what falls under that fear for the prisoners who are scared to make that change. There's a lot of variables, things that they're holding on to that's actually not in their control. You know, that they constantly believe, oh, I'm going to lose out on all that reputation I worked so hard on. You know, I'm going to lose out on all the respect that these people have for me. All these young'uns that I've brought through that respect me or rate me, how they're going to look at me. You know what I mean? I have more respect for people that actually work in McDonald's because of the understanding and the pressures and what they deal with. So I work with young people, and we do this exercise of what do you need and what do you want. There's a big difference. So when they're setting themselves a goal on what they want to achieve, I always say to them, okay, is that falling in part of your needs or your wants? You know, but once you understand that, it's a lot. So we've done this exercise in part of the 16-hour course in prison, and there was a lot of things where I got it confused that I thought I needed when in reality is actually I wanted. You know, but if I settled for what I needed, I wouldn't need to commit crime, which was crazy. I wouldn't need to commit crime at all, but I believed I needed it. So I believed I needed money in order for me to survive, in order for me to have all of these things. But I went about it the wrong way. Because
it gets back to that thing of how we, our perceptions again, and being careful with our words. So it's what you think, what you say, what you think, what you say. So when you start saying, I need a Big Mac and chips, you know, right, I need it. So all of a sudden, your limbic brain gets hold of that and goes, right, I'm going to do anything I can. I'm saying, I'm putting that in the same category as air and water and somewhere safe to sleep at night. I'm putting that burger and chips in that category. And then obviously the burger and chips escalates to latest fashions and then cars and then blah, 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 and all the rest of it. And we then want that so badly, we're prepared to do almost anything for it because we've told ourselves we actually need that thing. When we don't, we just want it. You know, Epictetus says, who then is the wealthiest? The person with the fewest wants. I think that's just beautiful. If you want to be the wealthiest person, and I use an example of some super rich people, Roman Abramovich and his big yacht that he had, he gave it away or lost it in a bet, allegedly, to his accountant, this massive super yacht it had two helipads on it. He lost it to his accountant in a bet. Anyway, so at that same time, an Arab prince built a bigger yacht, and Roman lost his yacht in a bet. Then he's built a bigger yacht. Well, he bought the boatyard and built an even bigger yacht than the Arab prince. Then all of a sudden, another Arab prince, a different one, built an even bigger yacht. So I say to guys in the prison, do you think Roman's happy with his yacht right now? And of course he isn't, is he? You know, he'll want the biggest yacht in the world. So if he can't keep up with his wants, what chance do we have? We just don't. So if you're not going to, if he can't keep up with it, then you've got to get off that merry-go-round and understand, if you want to be free, reduce your wants. You know, and then you're finding that yourself, Jay, aren't you? With reducing your wants and actually understanding you don't need much for a fantastic life with real meaning. You don't have to look over your shoulder all the time and seeing what's coming, whether it's the police or other criminals. You're truly free, aren't you?
Absolutely. I think, well, if my sister, who I'm very, very close to, was to give anyone her perspective of me, it would probably blow you away, because she used to see me for what I really was. Like when I was on the streets doing what I was doing, having all that money, taking the circumstances that my family were in, the situations around me, my whole environment, and saying that I need to be out on the streets, I need to keep these phones running, I need to do what I'm doing because these lot will struggle without it. But in reality, I was actually setting them up for failure, because making them dependent on something that weren't mine, that I didn't need, I go to prison, that makes them very vulnerable. Someone else could walk up to them and offer them something along those lines that could be a yes from them, which was a kick in the teeth, really, because I've done that with Andy as well, to be fair. There's a conversation we was having and it just came out that, are you actually doing them more good or are you doing them more harm? Because we was working out what I actually want and what I needed. And what effect these things are having on other people around you, which is huge. But for me to think I'm doing my family more harm when it's far from my intention, like so far away from my intention. Because if you ask most of the people that are doing all this criminal behavior, they say I'm feeding my family. You know, that's a big thing that I hear a lot. I'm feeding my family. Oh, I've got to do it for my family. No one else is doing it. No one else is giving me money. But I asked them, why is your mum not doing illegal stuff? Why is your dad who's not here? Why is he not doing it? Why he's working, but he's not in your life? Why is he not doing illegal stuff? You know, I ask these questions deliberately because I know they know what's right from wrong. They know what responsibility looks like. They know what they want and they know what they need. There's a big difference. And that's the blur that these young people are growing up with nowadays. Everything is so on a phone, everything's so close to them that they confuse what they want and what they need, and then go above and beyond to get what they want more than what they need. You know, it's scary, the concept itself. So these are part of the exercises that I use on a daily basis for myself, you know, to keep myself in check. So my sister now, she sees me sitting at home, even treats, like we go food shopping. She does not like going food shopping with me no more. I used to be that guy, walk in the shop with the trolley, everything. Yeah, just put it on there, put it on there, put it on there. Stuff that I don't need, I don't want it. Yeah, just put it on there, man. Oh, it looks nice, just put it on there. The package looks nice, put it on there. Whereas now I'm walking in, she buys 2 sugars. I'm like, do we really need that? We don't need that though. Put it back. You know, so she doesn't even like going shopping because she can see the drastic steps I've taken to understand and put things in place for myself. These are practical things that I've used and I keep using on a daily basis because it's a reminder to myself. You know, it's easy to fall back, you know, but you need to make sure you're going forward and applying these things on a daily basis, because you slip up and that's it. That's you going back into a sort of mind frame that you think, okay, you know what, if I can get away with one, I can get away with the second one, I can get away with the third one. You know what I'm saying? So good thing she would never speak on it, but we crack jokes about it here sometimes as well, about some of the designer clothes and all the things that I used to love wearing, like people knew me for. Whereas now I couldn't care less about it. I've more or less given all the clothes that I had away because I looked at that and thought, nah, that's not for me no more. If that makes any sense. So she doesn't like going shopping with me no more, but hey ho.
She can't win them all. I'm sure she'd sooner have the J that you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want to touch on, you know, with how Stoicism can help with finding meaning and purpose in our lives. I know what it's given me. It really has given me meaning and purpose. I think my life was pretty meaningful anyway, but now I really have got meaning and purpose with what I do at work and the stuff that I do with the men who are incarcerated there. And purpose is that thing that if we haven't got purpose, we're just adrift, aren't we? We're just ships that are floating about, not knowing where we're going. And the trouble is, once we haven't got purpose, we're easily distracted. You know, somebody can easily offer us something, which then takes us down a road or a ship way, for our ship to carry on that analogy, that's not that favourable to us. Once we have proper meaning and purpose, we know where we're going. We know what we're doing. It's very hard to then derail us, isn't it? Do you find that, Jay? Now you know what you're doing and where you're going. If somebody comes and offers you a few quid to do something that's a bit, shall we say, under the radar, because you have meaning and purpose, you know to reject it.
Absolutely. I think what I do want to touch on is how I even came into Stoicism, how I even found out about it, to be fair, because I sat in a class and the first question that came out of your mouth was, what's your purpose? It was meant to be an hour class, but I was daydreaming for 59 minutes of it. You know, the first question is what took me out, because it was a question that I was asking myself on a daily basis for years, you know, since my son was born. My son was born in 2014 and I went to prison in 2015. So I started Stoicism in 2017. So that's three years of solid, just sleepless nights asking myself this question. Like, what am I actually doing myself? Where am I going? Is this what I'm going to be my whole life? You know? And when I was asking myself in different forms. It was coming at me in different ways. Like I didn't know who I was, you know? And I never had nothing stable in my life that I can actually say, you know what, This is what I want to be known for. This is my legacy. This is something that I'm, because in reality, what do we work towards? Some people say they want to be happy for the rest of their lives. Some people want whatever they want. Me, I just want to be content in whatever situation I'm in. So having a purpose in my life gave me, because what some of the metaphors that I use with kids, I say you got two boats on a water. They've both got the same destination. One's got a sail and one's got an engine. The V8 engine, why not? This one here is, and water's your life. You've got the waves, all of these things are bad ideas, people's different thoughts, your friends, family, all these things. The one with the sail is going to struggle to get to its destination. It's going to take much, much longer to get there. But you having a purpose is your engine. If I want to get to my destination, there's no one that can convince me to do something that I know is wrong. It's not in line with my purpose, and actually get one over me and I can say yes to it. I even turn down going out with people because I know that's not in line with my purpose. I know what comes from it, if that makes any sense. So having a purpose gives me that stability, that reassurance within myself that no, I can say no and be happy with that. I can say no to people and not be worried that I'm going to offend them, and not be worried, are they still going to be my friends, or are they still going to like me? You know, that these are things that I can say, you know, because I'm someone who, I've got ideas for days. So I'll have people who like me. I would want to talk to me. Yeah, let's talk, Jay. I'll see them. We'll go play pool and that. They'll come out with different ways of making money. Different conversations are always there. They're always being had. But when it comes to the point of let's put it in action, that's when I say, you know what? This is where I stop, bro. Like, this conversation ends here. You get me? Because they know what I'm like. I don't want to hear it. If it's going to go towards that, stop. Let's not meet each other. Let's not see each other. If we're going to talk about something productive, how we're going to get the next kids that are coming up in our own estate to get into football, to get them into school, or get them into something useful, then let's have that conversation. But if it's something around how we're going to do this and earn the next dollar, then nah, drop me out. I've got much better things to do. You know, so, but understanding what purpose is where the difficulty lies. And that's another thing why I always suggest referring back to Stoicism. Understand what your purpose is. It gives you your foundation. Once you have your foundation, there is no battle out there that you're not ready to fight. Literally, there ain't no battle. Right? I've had 1 million hurdles put in front of me since I've come out of prison, but I never saw them as hurdles. I saw them as opportunities. I constantly looked at it as a time to train myself and to use Stoicism and say, you know what, okay, let's see how this one works. Let's see how I cope with this, you know? But they're all challenges. We're facing with the same tools as today.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. When we start thinking of where Stoicism can really help and help this country just be better, and I think we'd be even now to demonstrate it would be a better country if we could inject Stoicism into some really crucial places. And I know one of the things that people say at the end of the courses that I run is they say two things. Gov, when are you going to teach staff this? And then the next thing is when because staff need it, and and it's difficult, but I do spend time with staff trying to teach them some Stoic principles. And then I wish I knew this at school. I wish I knew this at school, and that would be such a brilliant thing if we could. So I just wanted to invite people out there who are watching now to think: is there any way that you can get and teach them really basic, easy Stoic principles to school kids, because they could genuinely change these young people's lives? And you know, and people often say, why don't you leave your job, Andy, and go and work in a school and do it? Well, because they're all done in, the people in prison, but they're not, are they? You know, I think it's incredibly valuable that what we do in prisons, and like the numbers even tell us, £18 billion a year with ex-offenders with the crime they commit. So I don't think we can just scrap prisons and not bother with them, but definitely schools. And do you think, Jay, how powerful it could be if say 12-year-old kids had Stoic lessons like they did in ancient Greece and Rome, where they sent their kids to Stoic class? Would you think it would be useful?
Absolutely. Like, you know, I had a conversation with it was two of them. One manager that I know from a school setting, and one of their pastoral teams. and we was having a conversation about schools and the structure of schools. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. I'm not saying that the education that these kids are getting is not good for them. It's good for them. I get it. But how are we really supporting them to live life in the day and age that we are in today, in the modern world that we live in today? How are we supporting these kids the right way? Because if schools haven't got mentors, the mentors who probably have a Stoic perspective, for instance, to go in and really tackle these kids' mind frames and make them understand that the world that they're going in is actually it's not going to be easy, you know? They go into English classes, they go into all these different subjects that they do to get an education, which is great. But there should be that extra bit where they understand the world around them, not in the perspective of a teacher who's probably that probably doesn't live in the same community as them, for instance. You know, they need people who are in the same boat as them, that see things the way they see things, to really explain it to them. Like, listen, this is what's coming towards you. You need to be ready, you know. And having a Stoic understanding of what they can and can't control will save them a lifetime of turmoil. You know, understanding what they want and what they really need, it'll probably prevent more than it will do as we are right now, trying to cure people with this sort of mentality. It would probably do the world would probably be a better place with that. But it's a conversation that needs to be had with the right people. And this is why I think I do and advocate on behalf of young people, because the opportunities that they can have within schools, if the conversations are had at the right tables, you know, the people who make these decisions, so much powerful things could happen.
Yeah, totally agree. You know, there's other places where Stoicism would be fantastic. I mean, in the arena that you work in professional football or any football or any sports club, when you think about when young footballers are taken on by football teams, what is it? 1% get taken on as professionals, and the rest are just chucked out on the scrappy. You know, what an opportunity for somebody like yourself to be teaching young apprentice footballers, I don't know what they call them now, academy footballers, Stoic philosophy, to understand that it's not the end of the world if you're not taken on by the club. It's just the start of something else. You know, it would be fantastic, because I know so many young men who've been washed up once they've left football because they don't know what to do with themselves. They put all their eggs in one football-shaped basket, and that got smashed against the rocks. So I think in sports clubs, and to be a better sports person, if you just understood some Stoicism. That's why it's really took off in the States, hasn't it? With American football and baseball, they've really taken to Stoicism because you can only affect how you play and not anything else. You know, and I just think it would be so powerful. No, we already touched on pupil referral units, where, you know, we have the young children coming into the prison, and they see us speak with our Stoic graduates. That's starting to spread now. Other schools are coming into the prison. Other prisons want to do it as well. So, you know, but it's kind of slow, and I want to give it a turbo boost. You know, that stuff that we do in the PE department at my prisons is starting to spread, but I really want to give it a turbo boost. And I think that the people listening now, anything that you can do to teach people some Stoic principles can only help. What do you think, Jay?
Absolutely. I think, as I always say, like, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, in a way.
Yeah.
Because we can all sit on our sofas, watch the news and say, oh, that's what's going on. Why is it going on? They need to do this, they need to do that. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing to help your next door neighbour who's struggling, whose kid's out until 10 o'clock? How are you supporting them?
Exactly. I just thought something that Stoicism can really help with as well. We're talking about offending a lot, but of course the offenders create victims, and I just think Stoicism is a wonderful tool for people who've been the victim of crimes, to understand that actually it's not their fault. It's not down to them.
One thing I have done, though, and I think just to say, obviously, why everyone needs to take a responsibility in shaping society. At work, I've identified a group of young people, or 6 of them so far, who are my ambassadors for sessions that I run. But part of the criteria of them being these ambassadors is Stoicism. I actually put in a little, some sort of 2-page for exercises that we do together in a classroom setting. where we work it out and get them in that mindset how they can help, because a lot of them go out in year 11s when they finish their GCSEs and do social action plans within the community. But I always give them a standpoint of, if you start with this and understand these things first, you'll have more of an impact. The impact you will have will be so much more than, because the first no you probably get, you might quit. So I'll push them and see how resilient they can be with that. But I always put them in situations, and we do what we used to do in the classroom, and do those scenario settings and just hypotheticals, because it's brilliant when you can use hypotheticals. It's not reality, but it gives you an opportunity to see someone's mindset, where they start from. So yeah, it's great stuff, and hopefully that's something I'm building on. And that's just 6 that I'm working with. They might go out and do their social action plan and probably engage another 6, 12 maybe. But that's how it works, slowly but surely.
So we better, people probably want to go to bed, Jay. Has anybody got any questions?
Do you think you've intimidated people with all your all your amazing all the amazing things that you've shared? Thank you so much for what you've shared. It's been absolutely brilliant and really inspirational. I know you were touching on, both of you, on like, what can we do? And I'm really keen to get your message out as much as I can, and to share that, I think, not just in the UK but internationally. But what would your advice be for people when they're trying to say to someone, the answer to these problems might be philosophy? Because I think people don't even know what philosophy is, do they? Or they think it sounds stupid, or it's like some academic subject. Do either of you have any advice about how you would sell Stoicism or Stoic philosophy as being like the way to change your life?
I think one of the things that I do is I've got an A4 piece of paper with probably about 20 different celebrities on, and at the start of some of the sessions I do with staff or bigger groups that I deal with, I could get them to write down who they are, these pictures of these people, and then what's the link between all of them. And that seems to get people a little bit interested, because they're kind of like superstar people, and they're superstar people, and the link obviously is Stoicism, and that gets people interested because of the star factor. When you're talking about people like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Darren Brown, who's the illusionist guy, all these people, and American generals and Lincoln, etc., and that gets people a little bit interested, and they think, okay, it's not about when a tree falls over in the woods, if nobody's there, did it actually happen? All that sort of rubbish. I think the 20th century didn't do philosophy much good. It went into a bit existentialist with it. But Stoicism's all about action, and that's how I try to sell it, with action. What do you think, Jay?
I agree with you. I think I don't even use that word philosophy. I think as soon as I mention philosophy, people run the other way. And then they run faster than Usain Bolt as well, to be fair. And I said it as well at one of the speeches that I did at the Aurelius Foundation. If Andy met me on the streets with Stoicism and he said to me, do you want to do a bit of philosophy? Put it this way, I wouldn't even given him a time of day. I would have told him to jog on. Honestly, because you use that word philosophy, they think politicians, well-educated people who are stuck in a book their whole lives. That's what they think straight away. So I don't even use the word philosophy. Mine is through action. People see me in situations and how I handle them and how I deal with them and how I react to things, and ask me, why did you do that and all that? And that brings them to the table for a conversation. So the best way you're ever going to sell philosophy or Stoicism is through your actions. Through your actions, what you say, and how you apply these things.
Which is what Stoicism is all about. Absolutely all about. It's not about the things we say. I mean, I'm in you're a bit of a different position now because you're a teacher, and maybe it's one of the faults in Stoicism is that why Christianity took over, because in the coding of Christianity, you must go and say the good word and spread it. Whereas Stoicism's about, no, it's like Fight Club, isn't it? You've got to keep it quiet. Yeah. You don't tell no one, you keep it to yourself. You do it all through your actions, which is great. But that's part of the problem, isn't it? Excuse me, I was just overcoming this cold. But that's part of a problem. And we've got to find a way over that, I think, and get beyond ourselves a little bit to start spreading the good word like Christianity did. Otherwise, it will fade out again, in a few years' time. So it's a funny one. You're dead right in what you're saying, 100%. That's the best Stoicism going, is through your actions, and that's what all the Stoics tell us to do. But there's a problem, isn't it, that we've got to do something to hook people. And that's the bit where you come in particular, is knowing the hook. A question just flashed up there.
That's the thing.
Yeah, there's a few questions when you're ready. Sorry, Jay.
Oh yeah, sorry. Do the questions, because we'll be here forever.
Yeah,
me and Jay, we can start a fire.
That's the thing, though, Andy. Because when I came out of prison, my Stoicism weren't for anyone else, though. It was for me. I've never spoken to Stoicism to anyone. I think one of the first places I've ever met other fellow Stoics was at the Aurelius Foundation. So it was a good thing, because it gave me an opportunity to speak to fellow Stoics, to get their perspective on things. But in a way, it was actually a better thing, because I can highlight it now. I know I take some of the tools that you guys use and sort of scale it up to the people that I work around, the community that I'm in. But it's an interesting challenge anyway. I love it.
Yeah. Well, we better fire away some of these questions.
So
we can start fire, me and you, Jay, chatting away.
So one of the people said, Andy, is your course available to anyone outside of prison?
Yeah, all you got to do is drop me an email and I'll send you it. I own all the rights to it. So
and they could get in touch with me. I could pass them on to you if that's the
no problem at all. Absolutely no problem. I've got about 5 different manual things, from 200 pages down to down to 2 sides of A4. That's just some practical tools, because I just boiled it all down to 2 sides of A4. The practical skills. Yeah, no problem at all. Just get an email address to me, and my work email, and I'll ping it.
Brilliant. Someone else has said, given the hang 'em, flog 'em and lock 'em away, that's a vote winner, what can we do to change the political will towards moving towards initiatives like this?
Cost. With what we do where I work, the cost is very low, and I think the outcomes are pretty good. So that's the way to get around the flog 'em bit, is that. And then when you've got prisoners actually taking responsibility for what they're doing and changing their lives and changing their communities, I think it is through, like Jay said, with actions, with stuff that actually happens in the real world. That's how we change people's perspectives on stuff. But it's not easy, because the landscape is dominated by right-wing press, isn't it? And that's difficult.
Yeah, that's a shame. That's the sort of stuff that gets my blood boiling, to be fair. Especially that all of these, everyone's for their idea or whatever they've got, but it's never to really tackle the issues that we're facing. It's a band-aid approach again, constant band-aid approach. You're never gonna sort the root cause. Yeah.
Another question was, Andy, how do you approach prisoners who are reluctant to Stoicism, e.g. on the first day of your course? I guess they're saying, how do you hook them in?
Right, so a lot of that comes from prisoners' word of mouth. So, how I hooked them in to start with the first course was, we've got in the prison, there's a level 2 gym instructor course, and then there's a level 3 personal trainer award, which costs an absolute fortune on the outside to get, and that's what all prisoners want to get. Well, a lot of the prisoners while they're in prison. So I thought, there it is. There's my gap in between level 2 and level 3. And I said, if you want to get on my level 3 course, because I'm the boss of the gym, I can decide who goes on the courses. You need to do this course called Stoicism. And they went, what's this? They did the course and loved it. And then from that point, that was back in 2016, it's kind of just took a life of its own. And now we're post-COVID, the real PE courses aren't running again, but the governor's got the Stoic course running, wearing face masks, and, because it's become an integral part of the prison. And where staff had problems with it to start with, they didn't like it. They thought it was a cult or some other nonsense. Now I get all members of staff referring, challenging prisoners to the courses, and obviously prisoners that are queuing up to do it. So yeah, and also you've got to take a deep breath and go, right, I'm going in, I'm doing it. So you can imagine some of the things that I speak to these men about I'm in a classroom with 14 of them in front of me, and the door is on the other side of them. But I'm going, right, here's why you're a toe rag, and here's what you need to do to fix it. You know, and then that takes it takes a bit of nerve. You know, and I'm a big guy and been doing the job for 30 years, but it takes some nerve. Yeah. But if you want to do it, dive in and do it, and you'll be amazed at what happens.
And then maybe as a final question, someone actually said to Jay, what do you think Andy said that got you hooked at the beginning? Like, can you remember what it was that initially got you interested?
I think, as I said, I was asking myself questions about where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with myself, and volunteering to go on a course that time. I sat there because I was just curious, you know. I've always been a curious person, as in, because I was a devil's advocate. I wanted to find out what Andy was getting out of it, you know. And I thought, okay, what is he preaching? This is me doing it again, being that victim of myself, trying to add my 2 pence into things that never concerned me. So that's what got me in the classroom. And I was like, all right. So every little turn, everything that he said, I was just always digging a hole and see him trying to get a reaction, but he handled himself well, to be fair. And yeah, it was definitely the purpose, because he asked a question, but I really just started going into myself, thinking about it, constantly thinking about it, and I didn't listen to whatever he was talking about after. And I went to myself, constantly thinking, couldn't sleep that night. But what he did the next morning was what really, really blew me away. He like pulled a chair out for me and said, sit down, let's talk about it. And that's where it starts, you know, having a genuine conversation. You know, some of the stuff he said I never liked, you know, it was direct with it, but it was needed, I think.